Ladies and gentlemen, our next presenter is Steven Scavulli. He's a skilled director of photography. After more than 5 years working as a director of photography at Groovy Like a Movie, he's worked on nearly every type of video production, including feature films, episodic television, short films, music videos, corporate videos, commercials, and live events. Several of his films have garnered awards, including 2017 Best Cinematography in a Narrative Short Film for the film Thin Lines at the San Diego Film Awards, and an Emmy at the San Diego Museum of Man's Torture exhibit in 2012, and Telly Awards for Cinematography in 2015 and 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, Steven Scavulli.
Let me check. Thank you for having me here, Mike. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be asked to speak here. A lot of good things coming previously, especially Gary Mansky's lecture. That is a pretty hard one to follow, as you can imagine. Gary is, he is what a lot of us very much aspire to be. He has a ton of experience, great eye. His work speaks for itself. And he is very much the scalpel or the sniper rifle of our business, where he has a market, he knows it, his rates are what they are, take it or leave it, and he's worth it. And he works in a very, I will say I have such great respect for what he does, because it is, you go and you do any kind of macro work, any tabletop, that small stuff, you would think that would be easier, being able to, like, you know, I play it like home and away. Working in a studio is home court advantage. It can be very much more comfortable a lot of times, but somehow when you get smaller, it gets a lot harder. And it's like you think about doing needlework or something like that, you notice how much your hand shakes suddenly when you're in that position. And I will tell you, the hardest days of shooting I've ever had have all been macro work, because you do not realize how hard it is to work so small and be stepping over every little stand and everything. And you realize you've just built yourself a forest you have to navigate, and every little thing. And as you get exhausted and tired, your tolerance for your own mistakes goes way down. And it takes a very patient and a particular set of skills that he has. And it's awesome that we all got to see that. I even learn a lot from every time I watch him. A little bit about my background. I worked at Groovy Like a Movie for 5 years. I came up beginning as a stage manager there. That was a tremendous opportunity for me because I got a great deal of exposure to a lot of different shoots. Basically, my first job was I was hired to be the first person in and close the shop up at the end of the night, and I got to see everyone's production in town. I got to see a million different ways of doing things. I got to see a million different types of shoots. We put horses on that stage, cars. I also got to, and it's one of the things I love about San Diego, is I got a million great crew members who let me follow them around. And I was just the annoying little brother who goes, what does that do? What does that do? What does that do? Can I touch that? Can I play with that? And everyone, to man and woman, have all been very patient with me in my developing years. And I got to sample a little bit of every crew job on set and follow around and shadow people. And I would love for there to be more opportunities like that coming forward, because you know, a lot of us got into this business because we didn't know what we wanted to do. We like telling stories, we like having fun, we like socializing, and we want to make something meaningful with our media. But we don't know where to start. And I think it's terrific to be able to get some kind of overview of that. And I got to try all of them out, and I got to find my favorite part. And I go, you know, I like doing this the best. And that's how I got into this. And it happened to be at an economically slow time everywhere. Basically there wasn't a whole lot of paid work, but we started shooting stock footage. And so I got to have a lot of time under the camera. Got really good experience with red cameras, Red 1. I got pretty used to packing them in ice, knowing all the different things to keep the robot happy, and make sure the pictures keep coming out onto the hard drive. And I got my start basically being a spot checker and making sure people were doing all the right things to keep the cameras happy. A couple of iterations later, cameras are much more stable, but that got me into the camera department and getting onto bigger productions. Since then, I've worked on, you know, my favorite start I got was, you know, they always say know when to keep your mouth shut. I have never been a good person at doing that. And I was a volunteer PA on Werner Herzog's film that he was shooting here in town. And I'm standing behind the line just doing lockups, and all the guys are talking, all the fantastic camera department, and they're like, yeah, this camera makes beautiful images. We don't know how to make the thing work and all this stuff. Well, we can't even figure out how to eject the magazine. I don't know how many days we're at. We have to get that guy in the trailer. And I go, oh, you just hit undo and exit at the same time. Like 4 heads turn. And they go, who are you? I said, oh, I'm lockup PA over on this corner. And they go, find someone to replace you and come join us. And so I got to hop in and just like show them the intricacies of that particular camera, because they could shoot circles around any of us. I mean, these guys have been all around the world with Werner Herzog. You've seen his work, but they didn't know that particular camera. And I had one little piece of knowledge that I could bring to the table, and in exchange, I could spend 3 days in a row hanging out with Werner Herzog and these guys and doing work with them and learning from them. And it was absolutely tremendous to see. And one thing that I learned from on that shoot that I've tried to carry since then was I was hopping back and forth between camera and lockup, and I'm standing in the driveway, and we're doing this little big long oneer tracking across the street. It's a standoff, the SWAT team. They're all got their guns out and everything. They're doing this long 60-second take, dollies into an ambulance, and a conversation happens between Willem Dafoe and I forget who, and then pushes through the front windshield. Huge shot, biggest shot we've done the entire, I mean, very much a traditional drama most until this point, but this is the standoff scene where the guy, he's killed his mother with a broadsword, and there's a standoff. It's an unusual movie. And we're sitting there, we're all ready, the whole thing's going, we're in Point Loma, we're shooting between plane takeoffs and landings for sound because we're under the flight path, so we've got PAs on rooftops radioing when we're clear, and this little cat from the neighborhood walks right through the middle of the shot and lays down and just starts licking its belly. And I'm like, here's my opportunity to be able to help. I go, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to go grab a trash bag or something? I can go throw the cat in the bag, get it out of here. And I hear Werner Herzog laugh, and he just goes, no, he's free production value. And I was like, he didn't care. He couldn't have cared less. His biggest shot in 2 weeks. He was like that. We had a random day where it rained in San Diego. He went inside and shot 11 pages they hadn't planned for. And I was just in awe watching how calm he was. You've seen interviews with him. He's kind of intense. But on set, he's very calm and relaxed in his nature. And it was one thing I learned to watch, a really good professional. I'm kind of an anxious guy. I have a lot of energy. And I try to bring it down as best I can, because that's part of what we are supposed to be is an anchor in a rough sea, or a rock in a storm. We are meant to be a little bit of a calming influence. That's a big part of what we do, and to utilize what you have sometimes and learn to recognize the things you can't change in that moment and try to turn them into an advantage. Because some days, and that's especially true. The more you can do that in the low budget world, the more you're gonna have an easier time. Instead of trying to fight that, the sun peeked out from here, and it's like, in a perfect world, I'd fly up a silk right there, and I'd be able to diffuse this, be able to keep a bit of the overall exposure that I've been working with here. But you know what? I don't have a grip department. I have a van full of equipment and a couple of guys straight out of college that are helping me on their own time. And it's not fair for me to try to ask them to run up an 8x 30 feet in the air. That's not happening. Not on this shoot, and probably not on most that I'm gonna work on. And I always try to say, just tack your sails. Try to catch the wind in your sails and take what you're working with and turn it into an advantage instead of fighting it when you're fighting a losing battle. So with that in mind, last night, I had what I thought was a really great plan when I came in here to do shooting a lecture on camera movement and lighting for movement and space. It was something I've done the last 2 shoots I've had where I ran out of time, had a great plan, and instead of having 4 shots that I was doing here, they're like, hey, I got something going on here. The client says, I got something going on here at 4 o'clock. We try to get out of here early. So I'm gonna let me see if I can mash these first 4 shots into one. And so I've been doing this a bunch lately and having a good time with it. And so I was like, I'd love to shoot kind of a oneer. I got in here, I had not measured the room, and I had planned for a 20-foot long set, which would fit in here. but I would be having lights all in the middle here. It just wouldn't have worked in this space. And as Gary said, those who fail to plan to fail. So here I am. And I said, why don't I try to catch the wind in my sails with this, and let's do something totally different. And we were lamenting or laughing about it when we got here yesterday and said, this is so weird coming in and bringing all this stuff and having a plan and everything. That never happens when we work. Like, everything is always, all good plans go to waste, and they're probably wasted 80% of the time, because this isn't an exact science. I know plenty of great producers and directors here in town, but you know what? Sometimes we're working with limited budgets, something happens, a homeowner says, you're not gonna shoot in my house. Oh, you're bringing that many people here? Well, now we suddenly have to use a crew member's apartment, or whatever it may be. And, we have to deal with it, and we have to do the best we can. So I said, why don't I come in here absolutely blind, have no plan whatsoever. I'm selling this as this is something I devised. But in reality, it kind of is, because this is realistically, what do we do when we don't have a lot to work with? Everything is different than we'd planned, and we still have a job to do. So that's what I wanted to start with here. And I was like, why don't we start with that? We will have a basic scene. I'm going to take suggestions from the crowd about how we're going to play this. We're going to do who is the character, what is the tone of this piece, and we're going to introduce this character to us, and we're just going to, that way I don't know anything about it coming in, but we're just going to read it and play it as it lies. As Mike said when we were beginning this, he introduced this to us and said that he really enjoyed some of these master classes he'd been to, and the thing he enjoyed the most was watching the creative process and the decision making. So I figured, hey, what better way to do that than if I am making a decision really right there on the spot.
Can I interject real quick?
Sure.
The class that I went to was probably 20 years ago, and the one that stood out was, yes, I'm old. Haskell Wexler, who walked into, these DPs are coming down there and standing on this stage and talking about stuff over and over. He walked in and said, folks, I don't have anything planned. I'm just going to show you how me and my guys work. And then he turned around and started working. And it was the most thrilling hour, because he got together with his gaffer and his key grip and said, here's the feeling that I want. And they interpreted that. And I had never seen that before. And the gaffer and the key grip, the only question they asked was, what stop do you want? And he said, nah, 2-8. Okay. And they went off and they made this beautiful scene walking through this hallway. And the whole deal was, you need to see this woman walking through the hallway, but you don't want to see her face until she sits down on the couch. And so they used like 7 different tricks in this hallway to illuminate her silhouette, to illuminate the wall behind her, to illuminate her just below the face. And it was magical. I learned so much. So that's the motivation for throwing him under the bus and making him do this.
The other was one that was an incidental conversation I had with somebody calling out a job a bit ago, and we were talking about the ASC masterclass. I happened to go to one last year. I got snuck in the back because I'm not paying $6,000 for 3 days. That's what those kind of things charge, and they're terrific. You get to take a class with an ASC member. Literally, that whole back row is ASC members. I mean, it's just a who's who. You do it at the mole stages. It's terrific. The really disappointing thing that I found about it, and this is what this guy pointed out, and it kind of hit a bell in my head, was he was like, yeah, they said we're going to show you how to light for dramatic, for comedy, and this other thing. And he was like, great, we're going to take the same set and do it 3 different ways. And each day they brought in a whole new set they'd pre-devised that was and it was totally different. It was custom tailored basically to what they were doing, and it wasn't really showing how how the lighting and everything else was changing it. They had a whole new set, they had whole new actors, they had everything perfectly tailored to it, and that's wonderful for the feature crowd when you have that budget and fully stocked budgets in every department. What do you do when you don't have that? So that's why I wanted to see, like, hey, let's take what we've got, do the best we can with it, and see how far the lighting can take us. The lighting and camera work, thank you, will take us. So that's where we're beginning. I thought we would do a scene, person sitting at a table, They have a drink, newspaper, or something else, and that's all we know.
We need a volunteer from the scene.
So,
Who wants to sit in this scene? Come on over, Jonathan.
I want to know.
We got our volunteer coming.
We're still not getting the feed from the camera to the switch.
Let's figure it out.
Looping out, right? Loop through?
Is that the one going to here?
The cross converting?
Yeah, does it?
Yeah.
Should, right?
Bear with us.
Show me the ways.
Did you get looped through?
Come back tomorrow.
Tom? Did you get looped through? Did you get video? Is the wireless thing powered on? So Steven, let's carry on with our process.
So let's begin and let's decide what we're going to shoot here. And then I'm going to make some decisions based on those parameters. We have Donovan. Thank you, Donovan, for joining us here. I appreciate we have a theater person here who we're going to give your best commanding performance possible. Let's talk about who is his character, what is the tone of this piece, what do we want that we're working with.
Let's do one at a time.
Let's go with, what's the scene? What are we talking? What could we be, I want to have somebody reading the newspaper. I'm thinking, here's some options as examples. We have a person, they're reading the newspaper, and they see something in the newspaper, and they get a piece, they're like, a piece of upsets them. Another thing we could do would be, it's a nice morning, and they're reading the paper, and this isn't really even about the newspaper and the setting. This is just, their day is starting well. It's a nice warm morning, you know.
Okay, so what's the scene? Any, fire away?
I don't know, maybe it's based on the set. I just get the picture of a hunter getting ready to go out for the morning hunt.
Cool, I like that.
Hunter going out
hunter.
for the morning hunt.
I don't hunt, so I don't know when you hunt.
Well, I like morning.
Yeah, that gives me a lot to work with.
Okay, what else do you
Hunters
need?
going out for a morning hunt. We were talking about hunters get up early. So we were talking about sun is going to be low in the sky. It is going to be peeking over the, it's, when you think about your morning scene, that's what I'm going to come in. I try to work as motivated as I can, especially when I don't have a lot of other parameters. Like we're just translating this the best we can and lay of the land. Now I'm thinking it is going to be early morning. He's going to be having a cup of coffee. He's going to be thinking about his day, but we're going to have probably pretty strong light. So let's begin with, let's say we're going to orient this. Let's move this table here. I think we're going to frame up a shot.
Okay.
That's a rifle.
You want us to chair on the other side? Where do you want
I think let's swivel back legs this way and we'll come back and let's set, see if we can get, I think we'll have him actually move to this position here.
Want chassis this side, bud?
If you want to be
my
here
God.
for me. If you want to just be facing that away. Chair position here on this side, if we could.
Is this good for chassis?
Yeah, I think so. And I think let's frame it in probably chest up.
Copy that.
And we'll start from there. We'll go about sternum height, I think. Since we were in our lovely cabin. This guy's serious. He takes his gun with him to the table and everything. Let's hope we're not having a gun cleaning accident, because you don't want to do that first thing in the morning before a cup of coffee. You want to make sure you clean your gun at night. Yeah. Trucker hat. Now I gotta go dig up some worms.
Maybe dolly grip
This is terrific. This is a turkey hunt.
or
for sure.
Tommy.
So I want to feel. I don't know how much stage you can give me, Trevor.
Yeah. Give me
If we can move this a bit. Let's get a bit back. I want to feel a bit of this table.
Okay.
I want to feel this room a little bit.
back real quick.
So we're on a pretty good this is pretty much where I'd start with this 45 mil lens. It's a nice mid-range lens in the wide-ish portraiture. You know, your portrait lenses are going to typically go between something like a 35 at the very widest end. That's if you want to feel a bit more the dimension of the face or the room. You're going to go all the way up to about 80, all the way up to, you could say, into the into the low telephotos, into 100, 135. That's about the limit of close-up portraiture lenses. Excuse me? Sorry, gentlemen. So I'm talking in terms, I generally, there's so many different choices for format nowadays. I generally park Super 35 as the middle ground. That's what we're on here on the Alexa. Thank you for asking that. As 45 does not have the same feeling on every sensor size. On a VistaVision size format, a 45 is actually a bit wider of a lens. Here, a 45 is pretty neutral, a little backed off for like, you know, a true 50. It's kind of, you know, everyone knows what your nifty 50 look. That's your straight up portrait lens. You know, it's got great, pretty balanced architecture to it. You're going to be able to feel a bit of the shape of people's faces. You're going to still be able. Typically, it's going to be the easiest lens to make. So you're going to be able to get fast stops. You're going to be able to get some separation there if that's what you want with depth of field. And I like coming down a little bit from the 50. You'll see like a lot of stuff that like Roger Deakins and those guys, they love like a 32 and a 28. And I love, like, you know, people who love Cook glass. I love that they have these what are for, you know, standard photo lenses. They're kind of more in between focal lengths. So you just back off a little bit from your traditional 50. You go to a 40 instead of a 35. You're going to a 32 or a 28, and it gives you just a little bit more space and dimension. I think you go too wide, you're going to start really feeling their head's going to feel like an egg. You're really going to be wrapping. You know, if anyone has seen the depth of field and, you know, angle of view charts where they show the same shot from all multiple focal lengths. You go all the way out to an 18, and they got buggy eyes. They're going to be a little more alien-like. Then you go all the way to like 100. Once you get past 100, everything's flattened, and you're starting to, and you can get great separation from your background, but you're not going to get the full sense of their dimension. So a lot of times you're going to work your way toward a telephoto in the edit, as it were, because by then you've established your character. Now you are talking about letting them have a conversation between one another, and you can get away with flattening those things. And now you want to be concentrating on that dialogue between two people instead of really getting a feel for the room and the situation. You've already established that. So 45, I think, is a great starting point. Trevor's got me a nice shot lined up here. We're really feeling coming along the top of the table. We feel like we're in the room. We've got two windows. I think we could. I want to see a little bit more of, feel a little bit more of that table.
Yeah. Can we come? Little brushes. Yeah.
This is part of the beauty about working with the dolly, is this is not a little less of a production when you start making fine adjustments like this, which is where, frankly, all of this is a lot. The devil's in the details. I like Gary's approach as well. I like lighting from the back. It's a lot easier to solve your problems when you work from the back to front, because you can. There's nothing worse than you lit a beautiful face, you got everything just right, and you realize that there's shadows doing all sorts of things you don't like happening in the background, and now you're redoing your work. I try not to redo things as much as possible because that's lost time. So, yep, let's lose work lights. I think we should have something like, let's do something a bit sourcey coming in through one of these windows. I'm thinking through this one right here, right through his back.
What would you like to put back there?
Let's do that, something in the middle of, something we can get a little bit of a beam coming through.
Okay. So, 200C?
Yeah, let's try that. Let's see what the 200C will do. Yeah.
Are you shooting, what color balance? What light balance?
Right now, we're at 4,500, though we can change that to whatever we like, so.
I think let's go daylight. Let's
daylight?
go to
All right, let's go
5,600.
56.
So I'm going to motivate this morning light coming over the horizon. It's just peeked out from above the trees. Let's say it's 6 a.m., whatever it might be. Now we're going to be talking about that time of day. I am thinking about things in terms of what are my light sources going to be? It's going to be that morning light here, and he's not going to have enough light to see his coffee, so he's probably going to have his kitchen light on. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking something like a scoop right here. So if we want to do, you want to try out that 1x1 panel I have with the softbox and the grid there. Okay. If we can just do a little baby menace and do that here, like we're doing a scoop on the table, okay. We'll start from there.
Just menace on the C-stand?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Even I have no idea how to work this.
You got it. Now this is where I take over.
And you want to put that guy through the window, correct?
Yes, please. Coming through this guy, and I think washing kind of across.
Straight through this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I'm gonna go.
Let's go through this one over here. Go through that one.
Okay, so as you walk into this situation, you're trying to figure out what you see and how you see it.
Yes.
So describe that frame.
So this frame
Is it a dark room? Is it a light room? Is it happy, sad?
I'm going to try and work some contrast in here. I think contrast is really, this scene, I think he's a little, coming into this, he's a little sleepy. Trying to think of, this is where I would often be, I'd confer with my director. I'm going to ask, what are we feeling about his morning, is he feeling like he's had enough hunting for a lifetime? What's his mindset, do you think?
He's eager to go out.
He's eager to go out. How about that? So this is his favorite part of the week. He's been working all week long. This is what he loves, and he's been working for the weekend, and he'll be damned if he's not coming home with some pheasant. Yeah.
He has that essence about, you were talking earlier just a moment ago. Now he's like excited, you can see the excitement and building up inside of him.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not, he might not find just being able to kill pheasants. It depends on what time of the year it is for your lighting pieces as to what animals he can kill legally.
Okay. So he's perhaps a little, he doesn't know what to expect, say. So he's like, I'm not sure if it's too early in the season for the
Female
pheasant.
batteries?
So there's a little,
About the lighting does vary by time
He may
of
have
year.
his,
Yes.
he may have a knife, he may have a bow and arrow. It depends on all the possibilities of what type of hunter he is and what he can come up against.
I like that. So let's say this is the first hunt of the season. He doesn't know what to expect out of this.
Duck season or wabbit season?
Duck or wabbit season. I am not a hunter, so I don't really know that much about it. We're gonna probably take some creative license with this. Yeah, Roadrunner, why not? So he has a little bit I think he needs to have a cup of coffee. We got that right there. Why don't we give him a Leatherman? We've got him, say, sharpening his bullet. Is that how those things work? So this is one of those times I'm going to do a brief talk about that fixture I have back there. One thing I love about that, I have full remote color control over it. It is a fully color tunable par fixture. And so this is one of those times where I can sit here and instead of having my guys cycle through gels, I can actually do that right here on my phone. We can change the look and color of that light. And that's part of what I love about utilizing those in my kit in a lot of these smaller shoot type situations. That's one of those things that we oftentimes, You say, do not let perfection be the enemy of the good. There are some times where you just can't quite get quite enough time that it's like, hey, you know, I would love to put straw on that back one, but you know what? Let's dim it down and warm it up instead, just because I don't have time to be testing gels. I don't have time. That's the last 2 minutes, and sometimes you just don't have that. And so this is one of those tools, I think, is one of those ways you're able to get a little bit more. You're able to get a little bit more on that last bit of time. So I'm going to start with, I think, a nice that morning light. I like that bit of warmth to it. I'm going to take the saturation up just a hair here.
I'm sorry, that's just adjusting the backlight temperature?
Yes, that's just that one. That's the only one I have that works like that, unfortunately.
You're doing that.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah,
Freaking out your guys, man.
he's not even used to this.
It's the future.
Let's see what, just for schnitz and giggles, let's see what it looks like if we cool it a bit. I can take it right to the wheel here.
Yeah, I think they're getting set in the back for you. They're kind of right on the site, so they're having a hard time. There we go. There's that morning.
There's that morning feel. So I think let's cool it off. We're gonna have it coming in there at 6,000 something. That angle looks pretty nice, I think. Let's see if we can come up a little bit higher on it. Yeah, no, I like that. Pinch it down, come up on that top barn door for me. Yeah. That's good. Do you have a little sheet of opal? Let's see what that looks like. Soften it a little bit. Just a hair.
Just the tip.
Crossing frame.
Oh, where'd the director's chair go? I shoved opal in it. Guys, it's time to switch.
Oh, it's over here. It's over here.
There's a lot of it.
You start with the back.
Crossing.
Yeah, I think that's typically for me. I have always. I feel like I want to see deep into the scene. I don't want to leave any mysteries that I haven't solved all the way back, because oftentimes, you look at the angle of the way your lens is going to work. Think of it as like as a point that your scene is entering. Your view, and this is where your lens choice comes in, that's canting that angle. So a wide angle lens is taking the scene like this. A telephoto is going to be taking a narrow view like this. Now, if I am working, I don't want to be working from front to back, because then I'll make a decision about where to set this key light. And as I work my way down set, I realize that suddenly I am trying to light something. I have not enough light to be all the way 15 feet back. So I want to start and solve those harder problems first. No, you don't want your lights to compete. Your scene may look, there are a whole lot of times where you want it to look like it's coming from somewhere, but you're going to do what's called carrying a light, where you are going to say, let the sun do the work in the background there, and you're going to establish its position, but it may not be reaching his shoulders there. We're working with going through essentially the diaphragm of this window, and the sun isn't reaching our talent there, but we do want it to feel like the sun is, so we may augment that where realistically the sun would just be lighting what is outside that door, and we're going to carry that light additionally with another fixture, such as the one we've placed there, and it still feels exactly the same. So there's a lot of times where your light is going to work dimensionally in a single plane, and you are going to just keep escorting it around the corner. You're going to be like, hey, I want it to just, realistically, I do want it to hit this shoulder. It's hitting here and here, but I want to get both. Well, I'm going to move another light of the same quality, same color, and I'm going to clock it in a way that is going to be complementary to that. And so so to your naked eye and to the camera, it looks like the sun is doing that, even though we have. I'm pretty happy there so far. Let's swing this guy in here, and let's start thinking about this in terms of our lamp there. So that's going to come straight over the top there. And let's see what it's going to do. Do we have power run to that guy, or do we have a battery on there?
Oh, you can
Cool.
totally see that. Just promiscuous, but I'm not trying to touch the pipe.
Yeah. There's not a hole, yeah.
So let's fire that guy up. And let's come down a bit on stick there. And swing it a bit over. I'm thinking just kind of center of beam would be like the upper corner of his notebook there. Yeah, something like that. Now he's wearing a hat there, so I have to work around that a little bit. Now, if we can actually adjust that, we can actually tweak that angle and then swing it a little bit back out just to get under the hat there. So I really am not a big fan of splitting eyes. You know, if I'm shooting a shot that is supposed to be essentially profile, that's a very flat shot. Now, we're not shooting a profile, but just as an example, I don't want to just see one eye. That's, you know, we go back to art history. That is the rudimentary two-dimensional planar thing. The Egyptians were the ones who changed that when they went from turning, you know, I forget, it was ancient Sumer or something like that, and they are perfectly in profile. You see one eye. The Egyptians were the ones that made it strange, and they started canting everyone out like this. What that did, though, was give you a sense of dimension. So I always say I'm going to peek around, and it's part of why I like using a slider. Oftentimes, especially in serial television and such, you're going to have, oftentimes you're going to have a slider worked on top of the dolly. So you're going to have the dolly work is going to be doing the large planned moves, but the slider allows the operator to adjust depending on performance. The actor misses their mark a little bit, they don't turn quite enough. Well, they can use that slider just to peek back around and reveal that second eye, so that in that moment that you are having that close-up or something, instead of just seeing one eye and you're seeing a two-dimensional representation of the human face, you are seeing it in a three-dimensional way. You're seeing both eyes, you're seeing a little bit of the curvature of the face. You may still be on a telephoto lens, makes even more importance there, because you're getting a feel for the shape of the face, and as they turn their head around, they feel real. They don't feel like a diorama. That's always it's one of the things that I have never loved about traditional 3D movies, is they always feel like a diorama to me, like stacked two-dimensional objects. And that's why a lot of what we do is trying to develop dimension and shape. And that's part of what we are augmenting what a screenwriter and a director are trying to do, which is we are trying to reinforce what they are telling us about a character. So we are getting back to this guy. I like how we are seeing a little bit of the curvature in his face there. We are not quite getting enough underneath that cap, but it does feel motivated. Now, I think, should we put something for, I want to do an eye light for him here.
What about a bounce through the window light?
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Yeah, feel about
Something right here, just give him a scoop.
Yeah, I like it.
Get something or other for that.
2x2.
Do we have,
Grab a pizza box on the truck.
Pizza box, platypus, yeah, I got this.
Hey Trevor, what's a pizza box? Pizza box is a 2x2 piece of beadboard. We got Roscoe Flex on
One
the
more
side,
time.
which is silver.
What's a pizza box?
Hey, so a pizza box is usually a piece of beadboard with a piece of foam core on the other side to give it a little bit of heft to it so it doesn't break in half. And basically it's got a soft side to it, which is the beadboard portion. And then we usually put Roscoe Flex on the other side, which is basically, it's almost like, it comes on rolls like gel, but it's a silver kind of bumpy material, which is kind of like a softer side of a bounce. So.
and that brings up another point that I like to do, which is everybody that is helping me here. Trevor is a director of photography as well. He is a gaffer. Micah, I believe he's DP'd stuff before as well. He's a director. Each of these guys work all the time, and I would be the biggest idiot on this planet if I did not incorporate their feedback, their suggestions. Part of my job is to know a good idea when I hear one. And that's one of the things that's part of what I love having a good crew around me for, is that I may be driving this ship, but you cannot run a sailing ship without a great crew. And if you don't have somebody watching your back and going, hey, I can take care of that. I see something, I know Steven wouldn't like that, edging it off. You know what? They just saved my butt. Part of what ends up happening here is these guys make me look good. So now we're looking, playing this in.
This is hard side, I don't think you're getting enough out of that.
Yeah,
Let's
sometimes
look,
you gotta come up real close on the table if you're gonna use it.
How about hard side, maybe walk it back,
Yeah, let's walk back that hard side.
like that though?
Yeah.
So you can see the Roscoe flex on the front side of that board. If you wanna show them real quick.
Were you trying to get the light from
Show
the?
the crowd real quick.
Like what?
You wanna show the crowd real quick the Roscoe flex, the shiny side
Yeah,
of the board,
this
so
is
they can see it.
Roscoe Super Soft Silver.
Kind of-
You can get it in the big bowl.
You can put it on
Make it on
anything.
any shape you want.
Yeah.
It's kind of a speckled, picture like a piece of aluminum foil that's crinkled up and flattened back out. It's going to give you a little bit of that mottled, but so that it's not totally direct and not, just a straight beam. It's going to give you just an edge back of that.
You like that?
Yeah, I'm digging that.
That's a buy.
Now, I am not liking, I need a little bit more out of his right eye. So I also want to bring something fill-wise from back this side too, to bring.
Soft.
Yeah, something soft just to light up that right eye here.
Want to do a single quasar tube on a dimmer?
Yeah, let's do that.
Alright, cool. We'll grab the single quasar stick on a dimmer and just bring it up over here.
Trevor is calling for a single quasar tube on a dimmer.
You talk about using silver versus gold in the bounce?
Yeah, so.
Somebody's asking about the difference between silver versus gold on the
I don't really
bounce.
use gold all that much. I do like it. You call that, gold is, we ask for Elvis. What was his wife's name?
Lisa Marie?
Elvis, Priscilla's silver, and you get silver and gold, and that's Lisa Marie. So when you call for that on set, that's often what you're gonna be using. I use gold, it is not as common. Silver, you're going to maintain your color fidelity. The gold is when you really want to warm something up. And there's a lot of, it's a little, I feel like it maybe market kind of things, but we tend to go with a little bit lower saturation stuff down here. I'm going to use it for something like a little bit of glow for sunset. I'm going to do, but a lot of the times it's a little too heavy-handed for my taste and for the kind of work that I'm doing a lot of times, which is going to be more on the safe, conservative, corporate type things. But I love gold and definitely going to use it in a lot of scenarios where you're trying to get a little bit of firelight, doing fill of fire, that kind of thing. It definitely has its place. But I would say I probably use it about for every time I use silver, I probably use silver 5 times and gold once.
The only time I've ever used gold is for people with my skin tone, which are so white you start looking blue. My daughter is incredibly pale, and with a gold, she looks like a normal human being.
Yeah. So gold can be very good to different skin types. Now I will admit that is in Southern California, that's one of those things that we light mostly white people. White and Mexican American people is going to be largely who a lot of the talent that you're working with. It's one thing that I'm very jealous of a lot of cinematographers in Atlanta is they get a lot more, lighting African American and Caucasian people is night and day. As far as your technique. And there's a lot of absolutely terrific cinematography coming out right now that is really changing how people look at lighting African American skin. Mudbound. I'm trying to remember, I've been reading a lot of these ASC articles about it, but the rules are not the same for different types of skin. The reflectivity for a darker shade of skin is going to be much higher. Even though it seems a little counterintuitive, it has more of a sheen to it, and so you tend to use a bit more like lighting. I hate to relay this by lighting objects, but lighting it like a car. You're going to use the reflectivity of the specular quality of a person's skin because we all have oil in our skin. But when you have a darker tone of pigment, the specularity of the reflection of light is going to be more contrasting and apparent with the depth of that. And so you utilize that, and that gives you an opportunity to create a lot of depth. You're always looking for opportunities to create. By and large, you're almost always looking for a way to keep depth with a person's face because we don't like to light people as flat objects. unless that is part of their role. You'll see they have done a nice job here black wrapping that. This is a big, broad source. It is great for filling in area, but you'll notice they
I want to show that
wrapped-
off. I want to show this off real quick. A quasar is a single tube of light, LED, correct?
Yep, LED.
And what they've done is they've wrapped this section with black wrap so that it's just reducing this one section to the light that's coming out. And now he's putting 2-inch gaff tape on the top and bottom as barn doors to limit exactly where it's going.
That is it can be very challenging. Soft light is very gentle and it is friendly for filling in these little spots. You can see that's filled in that light underneath his hat very nicely. It's very hard to control though. It goes everywhere by nature. Soft light doesn't have a direction. A hard light is going to be like its telephoto lens. It's going to be on a line. Soft light is going in every direction. And so oftentimes to control it, we're typically going to either use black wrap and you're going to choke it down, or you can direct it with something like a grid, which is what's in the 1x1 fixture that's hanging above the table. So those are going to be on your KinoFlow fixtures. Those are going to be the louvers, the egg crate that's going to be in there. On an 8x frame, you can get the same kind of thing and lay it in front of that, and you can take what is a broad source but constrain its spill onto your set so that you're not ruining the contrast that you have started to establish in your back with your original lighting in the back. Yeah, you're controlling your spill. You're
Okay.
maintaining that wrapping quality.
How you liking it?
So he's looking pretty good. I think we should come up on that dimmer a bit.
Yeah, coming up on it. Keep going. Keep going.
Coming a little bit.
Keep going.
There it comes.
And let's hold about there.
Yeah. Now we're starting to see it over that.
Yeah. We can still feel that shadow from his hat. Like as Jonathan was right to call for, that seems appropriate to his character. He's getting ready to go out and he's going to spend the day outside. It's not appropriate for us to lose the hat right now. He's getting ready to leave here. That is an essential part that we've chosen for his character. I am definitely liking this a bit. What's up?
That's his
Sound
shotgun.
guy? That's his gun. That's his boomstick.
That's a sound hunter as opposed to a sound guy.
So now we have a good foreground and background exposure. What are we missing here? I feel like we are missing feeling this space. That is, where are we? Well, this could be anywhere USA. I kind of want to feel a bit more of this room. So I'm going to look for objects. Oftentimes, I'm going to insert objects into the foreground. How are we on time, by the way?
Okay.
We're good?
How close to the foreground do you want it?
Let me take this one here.
Which one?
This one, and let's start. Curious about seeing.
No, I can't see the monitor.
Yeah.
Here.
Let me spin that assistance monitor if we can.
Yeah.
Here, walk back over there. I
Yeah,
got it.
I'll trade you. Thank you, Mike.
Look at that.
So I want to close this left portion of the frame here. I feel like I definitely want to have something kind of in there. You start adding too much into that foreground, it starts feeling rear windowy. And we're looking like we're spying on somebody, and we're like looking through the, if I always conscious of this when I'm using, I like how plants do, because they can often add a bit of color, but you recognize the green, you recognize that it's a plant, and so you're not, it doesn't pollute the frame the way a red or a much stronger color. Green is an organic color to the world we live in. I try not to use it too much on both sides of the frame, because then it feels like you're just a peeping Tom and you're just like looking through someone's bushes, and it's like it doesn't really matter what they're doing. You feel like you're looking at something you're not supposed to, and that's an intentional choice. And unless I'm deliberately going for that, I'm probably not going to. But I feel like something like this is, I'm in his kitchen, so why don't we hit this with a little bit of morning light? Why don't we do something on the blue end? If we can light this up a little bit.
I got
That kept it.
Yeah. There we go. Seeing a bit of sheen there. So here we get a little bit of the out of focus. Can we lose the yellow ribbon? I'm not feeling that quite as much.
So much of DP is.
She wore a yellow ribbon. Eric got that one. I like that little speckle there.
Let's swap the half for a quarter, guys.
Yeah, copy that. Line in.
Okay. And can we get a little rig for the phone, maybe a platypus or something? How about,
I'm a rig.
Red bounce. That's nice.
Got a little piece of it there. Kind of move around the space, kind of find it. You want to take
Yeah.
a piece of that right there, right? And we see a little
Yeah.
bit more of it.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Still kind of around the third crossing.
Let me see what.
what we call a grip jungle.
Grip jungle.
Now he's got an action we want to have that's, we want to get a sense of this anticipation of the day. He hasn't been hunting since this time last year, since, end of season last year. So he's a little anxious, getting ready to go, but let's say he still wants to do his morning routine. This would be one of those times where I would say, feeling-wise on this, that typically I'm in a situation like this, I'm thinking camera movement now would be, we have now built ourselves into something where we don't necessarily have a ton of room for camera movement, nor do I necessarily need one. Do I need to explore this space? I don't think it's going to reveal a ton. But this is somewhere where, performance-wise, I'm going to say, Trevor, loosen that head up, and let's keep it a little bit live. I want to feel, this is where I'm going to use the camera oftentimes to relay a bit of the emotional or his internal process. So there's a little bit of that that anxiousness of him that's going to be, and that's oftentimes you can either do that with a very stable handheld rig. Even on telephoto, you can get away up to like 200. Really good operators can get up to 300 millimeters handheld. You oftentimes will build something where you'll like set the scene just like this, and then you're going to put the dolly or something similar. You're going to wrap that in furniture pads, and you're going to operate just pinned to this thing so that you have that live feel that you get with organic movement that typically comes from a horizon just shifting a little bit and a little bit of movement like that. It's going to feel a little bit handheld, but it's not going to be Bourne Identity. It's not going to be all over the place. We're not searching for him in frame because he's moving so radically. Beast of Southern Wild? Haven't seen it yet, unfortunately. Yeah, it's become very, very popular in cinematography, and I think there's good examples of it and bad examples of it all over the place. A lot of it comes down to editing. That they had when they shot Fury Road. I forget what they're averaging. It was less than a second between cuts. It was about a cut every second, I think. And what the DP told all the operators was, every damn frame, when in doubt, peg the crosshairs right on your subject. And that was part of that. If you're cutting that fast, and that's part of why this is important to have a conversation with your editor. If you were cutting that fast, you do not want to be hunting from left to right across that frame, especially when you see it in the theater and for a movie that's made for the big screen. If you were sitting in the first 6 rows, do you know how much muscle strain that is on your eyes to go from here to here twice in 2 seconds? You do that for 90 minutes. It doesn't matter how strong your tolerance for that kind of thing is. You're going to have a headache, and you're going to have a hard time deciphering the emotions and necessary content in the story, and you're going to be working a lot harder. Now, there are definitely times where I do want the audience to have to work. I want them to have to hunt in the frame. Bourne Identity and all the Bourne movies used that really well, where it was a subjective camera, where a lot of the time that frenetic movement is showing his decision-making process in real time. So you were switching back and forth from him moving in space to a really frenetic shoulder-operated shot, because it was him in a moment of action making a decision, but you always walked away with that. I think nowadays when you have a fight scene or something going back and forth, you don't want to be just going, it's exhausting.
Okay, so how are we looking?
Back to frame, we're starting to look beautiful here. I love that this little bit of, that we've lost that yellow ribbon, but we have a warm glow here. It's not, it's about the same kind of tone that we're getting out of our manila pad there. Not bold and popping. Doesn't look like a yellow ribbon. It feels more like the light you'd be getting in through the morning light, which is why I think we're going to warm that up a little bit.
Okay. Pressing.
Can I ask something before you make too
Sure.
many other changes? So suppose you wanted to separate your talent from the background a little bit more, and like
Mhm.
talk about the rim light a little bit. Okay, so that would work over his right shoulder, but what about on the left? Well, now you've made that change, so that
Yeah.
separates him a little bit. But like before you did that, maybe that answers my question right there. What are some of the things you might do to separate his left side from the background a little more?
To separate this left shoulder.
Yeah, because it's already lit.
So that's one area where I now want to start talking about negative fill. That we now have, he is nicely lit, but he's a little bit too lit. I want to take some of that back. Now the other tool that we have to work with here is not just light, but shadow. And that's the absence of light can tell a lot. We get a balance of it. That's part of where you get that contrast from. I spent the whole first year of my shooting career shooting high-key white cyc, just do the Apple look. And I never want to light anything high-key again. But I have a pretty good sense of it. But I love any opportunity to introduce shadow. So I really don't want to, this light is pooling on him nicely, but I really want to feel that contrast between the morning light because most of this set is being backlit. So if we can walk, we're going to walk in a flag here, and we're going to try and cut down a little bit. I don't think we're getting that much from there. I think we're probably going to have to shade something from that top light. If we got a little like a 1x2, we could arm over there.
We got a whole Matthews bag over here. It's too small. You're talking more of like a topper there?
Mhm.
2x3? A smaller one? Make sure I understand. Are we doing like a topper for that 1x6?
Yeah, I want to take. Let me get out here.
Yeah.
You can't leave.
I want to get just a little bit more like of a vignette kind of falling here. So that may actually,
Gotcha.
we can probably get some of that just in angle, but a 2x3 just chopping a little bit of that. Yeah. Let's see where we're at here.
I'll take it.
So you can see what you look like as a hunter in another way. Oh yeah.
So check this wall out, is what we're talking. Yeah, I really do want a 2x3 though. Or a meat axe.
Like a wag,
Yeah.
like a wag flag or something.
Do you have anything like that on the truck?
I've got, should have a meat axe on there. It might have been set up for repair.
If we have it? A long flag. If not, bring the
Let me see
2x3
what.
stuff.
Are you seeing this light casting the shadow of that flag on the back wall? Is that was the problem you were looking at?
Well, we're trying to get
We're
more
trying to take
contrast.
that
Taking a little more contrast. I think it's just spill coming from this.
I think it's spill coming from this.
Yeah, too.
That thing's just puking everywhere.
We can do
Yeah.
a side
Yeah.
up on here real quick. Side there. Take a look.
Yeah.
So let's make sure they see what we're doing.
Yep. That's a whole lot of it there.
4x-sider just coming straight out.
Copy that, 4x6.
Beautiful.
4x-flop. Block everyone's view.
Yeah, now nobody gets to see.
Congratulations to you folks in the front row. Your show just got black.
So, directors, what are we feeling right here? How are you feeling so far about this? Do we feel like this is, we feel in this scene yet?
Personally, I think I'd add a little tiny bit of smoke.
A little bit of smoke?
Yeah.
That is exactly what I would love to have. We are not in this is a smoke-free facility, and unfortunately, we can't do
It's
any.
not just a
But I would-
smoke-free facility. The fire
Code.
the fire alarms themselves are sensitive to
I mean,
fog.
in a perfect situation.
Yeah,
Yes.
it would. I would be doing, especially with
Warm enough, like it doesn't seem like morning sun.
morning sun.
It's not warm, there's no warmth.
Okay. Lacks warmth and depth.
Yeah.
If you couldn't use the smoke, could you not use, steam coming from the top?
We could, I think that having do we have a hot coffee we could work in here? That would be great to have something like backlit there. Oftentimes, I would typically put a hazer in here, and I would build up a little bit of atmosphere. You'd see a lot more of this beam in the space rather than just on the wall here. You would be getting a bit more of the feeling of it in this. You'd be seeing that beam cut out and edged right here, and that'll help a lot. That would help a lot for motivating that. Question?
Hazer, I just gotta ask.
So hazer is going to be typically what you like a typically similar to what you'd expect for a smoke machine, but a hazer is going to give you a bit more it's atmosphere. It hangs consistently in the air rather than you've got a fogger or the spray can ones work pretty well. They just go, they smell bad, they go away quickly, and you go through a lot of cans of them. But the hazer is really good for consistent, even when you want to cut that beam out, they're really good for hanging in the air like that. You're going to typically use something if you want to get low-lying fog. You're typically going to use dry ice. That's going to settle. You're going to have like a temperature gradient between the temperature of the fog itself and the atmosphere in the room. That makes it sit. But haze tends to be the most common for this kind of stuff. It's typically, I believe, a glycerin, and you use it a lot. There's two different kinds.
Oil and water-based one.
Oil and water-based. The oil one will leave it all over everything, which is just part of life sometimes, but I try not to overdo it. And, your crew.
It's better than breathing fog juice all day. But.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with Q&As. I'm going to go into the front room and look for hands raised. Any Qs out here? No questions? No questions? All right.
Yeah, it's going to be a machine.
Yes, go right ahead.
For Reds over at San Diego Stage and Lighting, San Diego Film Minerals as a
Gotcha. Perfect. Stephen? Stephen?
Yeah.
The question was, when you're shooting something like this and you know you're going to do something in post, how does that affect your decision making here?
It would depend what I'm doing in post. What I would be talking about, let's say doing something outside the windows, doing window replacement. Oftentimes that is going to be one of those things I want to know first thing before I set out here. I almost never come up with something where we get all the way out to this point and then we are going to do something in post, because I don't like fixing it in post. I don't like doing patches. And typically that's one of those things where if you haven't planned for it, that's where you're going to lose a lot of budget. Okay. So this is the kind of thing where I'd be already, the kind of thought I'd be looking at this scene, I'd be like, we're doing window replacement, we're doing sky replacement. That's going to be the kind of thing I'd be like, okay, that can be done simply enough as long as we have, if we have green back there, blue, you can even do it just with a single solid color like black or white. You can pull a Luma key, any of those things. You don't want to run a plaid jacket behind the window. That might make it a little harder.
Okay.
But
are you when you're looking at this on the monitor, are you wanting to look at it on set with a LUT or a RAW?
I'm going to be looking at it with a working LUT at the very least.
Okay.
Depending on what kind of camera and color space I'm working in, I always want to see as much as I can to my finished product. There's typically going to be on a larger set, there's going to be 2 or 3 different looks that people are looking at. I typically go with something, I want to toggle between, I want to be able to check my RAW, and just use that to just be able to typically go, okay, where are my highlights here? Where is something like that? I want to check, especially my waveform, that bit in the lower right. I want to look at something like that and be able to just check my work with that and know that I'm falling within, or if I have something that I want all the way outside, I just know it's already hitting there and I can just make my decision. I want to work off of probably a standard, a Rec 709, Rec 2020, something that's a regular, that's a fairly normal color space, and I want to toggle between that and my LUT to see what the effect is having on, because if you're running a LUT that has a heavy, very warm kind of quality to it, you're warming up your shadows or something like that. I want to know if I need to do something right now to work with that in mind.
How many LUTs does the ARIA accommodate?
Any LUT you want drawn to it. So any 3D LUT you want to create, there is going to come.
How many at one time?
So you throw an SD card in, so as many as your SD card can hold.
Eric can hold as many LUTs as your SD card can hold.
I'm typically like the process of VFX though. If I'm working with a LUT, I have to know. I would rather not have a specialized LUT if we haven't made a decision on one. If we don't already, if the director and I haven't established a look and a color, and we haven't worked on the LUT ahead of time, we've shot some sample footage, we've done a sample grade and made a working LUT that way, or if we're blessed enough to have an on-set DIT, we are going to work with something that is going to be pretty close to finished product. It would be what in color grading in terms of one light look. So you would be able, that's your one light you'd apply to that entire scene, and then you tweak from there.
Okay, any other questions?
At what point do you start bringing your light meter to make sure you have continuity with your key to fill and key to background ratios?
The question is, at what point do you start using a light meter?
Ordinarily, throughout all of this, I'd be metering the whole time through. I've got my meter with me now, but I've intentionally limited the scope of what I've been doing just so I can continue talking because I have ADD.
Okay, any other questions?
So many.
Yes?
I know you got your start in like learning how to work cameras and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering when you took the jump from learning how to use cameras to like training your eye to be able to make the kind of quality footage you want.
The question is, how do you make the jump between working with cameras and learning to make images with light?
Hire somebody more experienced. That's the way I've gotten through. And I am admittedly not the best lighting guy on the planet still. I'm still in that stage of development, but as you'll find, you have to set out at a certain point and be and do your absolute best. And the way I do it is I try to do as much of it as possible. If somebody every year I do an internal audit of myself, and I sit down about Christmas time, and I write down all the things that I hate about myself. I hate about my work.
Merry Christmas.
Because I hate a lot of things about my work. Yes, Merry Christmas to yourself. And you try not to make it too depressing. But you go, hey, what did you do? You try to balance it, and you go, what did I do well this last year that I wasn't doing the year before? I make a list of those things, and I go, which ones do I want to keep working on? Which ones do I want to keep feeding? And I also try and be as honest with myself, and I try to ask my peers. I ask the lighting guys I work with. I say, is there anything that I need work on? How's my attitude? How is my approach? How are my rates? How are they matching this? I try to be as honest and brutal with myself as I can be. And that's why I tend to be fairly self-deprecating about all this, because I always feel like and that's the beauty about this industry, is it's a moving target. You never, there's no reaching Rome in this. There's just dying at the end. And trying to do as much as you can before you do. There's.
I'm gonna cut you off. Look at other beautiful images and try and figure out how they lit them. That's a first step.
Yeah. So going back to the original question, hire good people, learn from them, do scene studies, take an image you like and try to pick it apart. That's the main thing that we try to make sure we know how to do, is that we understand how it works, how it got there. And if you reach at an impasse at that point, that's when it's time to reach out, put something on forums, ask questions, reach out to an elder, and get some help.
What forums do you like?
What forums do you like?
Honestly, Facebook is a huge place still right now. It's the main reason I keep my Facebook account is because I'm a member of so many good. There's one called Super Secret Film Group on Facebook. They've moved over to Patreon and such. I think there's a lot that's actually still worth money in there. The cinematography.net, I believe, there's a handful of working DPs today that are Roger Deakins he's at deacons.net or something now. He has his own kind of thing. But there are guys with ASC after their name who go on there, and I have literally seen, some guy going, hey, I'm going on my first commercial shoot of my life. I'm scared, whatless. I don't know what I'm doing here. Can I get some help? And a guy with ASC goes, here's what you do. Get this, and this. Do that. I hear what you're saying about that. Don't worry about this. And they'll literally walk you through hand in hand, don't expect that. But you'd be surprised at the wealth of information you can find. And sometimes just Googling literally the answer in quotes, or the question you're asking in quotes.
Which
All right.
one is that?
Cinematography,
Cinematography mail list.
yeah, thank you. DVX user, there's a whole host of them. And user groups, red user, they're all over the place.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Steven Scavulli, we got to get to lunch. Thank you. Great job.